theocratic science. I've seen theocratic science. When I was teaching at Rutgers, I had a student who was from Pakistan, and she provided me a lot of articles in English about Muslim science and how the goal of Muslim science should be they actually didn't talk so much about God, but they talked about principles of good and bad that could be discovered and dealt with, and they were talking about good and evil as the subject matter of science.
No, I think that's a worthwhile point. It's interesting that you brought up Muslim science. About 3 or 4 years ago, I started, because I have a little web page with a lot of evolution stuff up on it. I started to get emails from Turkey and Lebanon and even a couple from Iran, believe it or not, of students who wanted me to answer their questions about evolution. And a few of them I asked, why are you asking me this? And they connected me with the writings that go under the pen name of Harun Yaha, who is an Islamic writer based in Turkey, who has written a whole series of anti-evolution books. And one of the students was actually kind enough to buy me an English translation of the book and mail it to me from Turkey so that I could see what all this was about. And it astonished me. Two parts about it were, one was, I suppose, not so astonishing, and one was downright hilarious. The not so astonishing parts is that all of the arguments made in the Islamic world for the scientific insufficiencies of evolution are just recycled versions of the ones that I've talked to you about here. So there's nothing new. But the second part was genuinely amusing. And that is, Harun Yaha argued to his young readers that they should appreciate the fact that evolution is a Western Christian plot to subvert the morals of Islamic youth. And as part of his proof of this, he pointed out that Charles Darwin studied for the priesthood of the Church of England. And that proves to you that he's just another crusader, which I thought was a rather interesting take. But the other thing, that's worth pointing out, and I think that we can learn a lot from the history of the Islamic world. And if you go back to the 13th or 14th century, and you look at the great Muslim caliphate across the Near East and North Africa, that was the center of learning and science and cosmopolitan thought. The Islamic world was the leader in mathematics and astronomy and in many other branches of science. Something happened to the Islamic world to the point where the amount of genuinely important science done in the Islamic world in the 20th century unfortunately is very close to zero. And that something is exactly the ascendancy of the kind of theocratic talk that you are talking about. And if this were to happen in the leading nation in the West, we could see the same sort of retreat backwards, and that worries me a great deal.